Listen up, people. That's right. It's time to listen to the sparks of bliss in your life. I'm your host and life coach, Caroline de Posada from Miami, Florida. And this podcast is an invitation to join me in upgrading our mindset, wellness, and relationships so that together we create a life that unlocks our bliss. Join me each week as we explore practical strategies, inspiring stories, and the moments of clarity, or as we like to call them, los momenticos, that make the world a little more magical. Consider this your weekly dose of wisdom in your pocket. Are you ready? Let's do this. Hi, listeners. Welcome to episode 11 of Blissin' Up. Thank you for being here. And if you are new to this podcast, this is a podcast where we focus on upgrading our mindset, our wellness, and our relationships so that we create a life that invites bliss to find us. It's not always easy to find bliss in this brutal world, but if we listen closely and we pay attention, we will find that bliss lives within us and that the sparks come when we least expect them. So today, I want to share with you what to do when all you can do is wait. If you've been around this podcast, you may know that I have been dealing with a serious crisis in my family in regards to my sister. My sister has struggled with obesity and diabetes and recently had a toe that would not heal and unfortunately took a turn for the worse. So I've been sharing in real time what we've been experiencing in our family with this crisis that has presented itself and how we are moving along and dealing with that. So this week, my sister had a surgery. Half of her foot was amputated. And my family and I sat in the waiting room waiting for the surgeon to come out and give us the results of that surgery. When he came out, he told us that the surgery had gone pretty well. He had some good news. There was some blood flow. It, worked out nicely. It could have, it was as good as it could have been expected from what they were expecting based on what they were looking on the outside, right? So it was a pretty good surgery. But of course, the question that came up is the most logical question, which was, what now? Like, what's next? And the surgeon looked at us and said, now we sit and wait. We have to wait to see if the foot heals, if the wound heals. Now, when I asked a little bit about what that would look like, he said, okay, well, the surgery happened on a Wednesday. So he said, we're going to do nothing until Friday. And then on Friday, we're going to open her up and we are going to see if the surgery is healing or not healing. If it is healing, then we're going to close her up and we're going to wait until Monday. If it is not healing, then we're going to have another conversation and potentially explore other amputations. In that moment, we began the waiting game. And everybody has experienced the waiting game in one way or another. I mean, I'm sure you have experienced the waiting game, maybe because you're waiting for your high school, maybe you're waiting for your kid to get accepted into a high school or into a college, or maybe you took the bar exam or the medical boards and you're waiting for the results, or you interviewed for a job and you're waiting to see if you got the job or not, or you had a biopsy done from, a mass that was found in your body and you're waiting to see if it's cancerous or not. We've all experienced the waiting game in our lives, and the waiting game can be excruciating. It can be brutal if not handled properly. So this made me think about how people sit and wait. And there's two ways that I've noticed people tend to wait for things. One is we tend to worry. We focus all of our energy on worry. Worrying can make us sick to our stomachs. Why? Because when we worry, we are grieving in advance. We are suffering in advance. Because when we worry, we don't worry about the best case scenario. We worry about the worst case scenario. So we get anxious. We get depressed. We lose focus. We're unable to work. We're unable to think about anything else. We become paralyzed in the moment. We tend to procrastinate living because we are focused on worrying. And worrying is a thought and a habit that is extremely destructive in our lives. But most of us kind of tend to cling on to that worry, and that actually feels like a productive use of our time, because worrying is within our control. So we worry to feel like we are being proactive. It's an interesting thing. I invite you to observe people that are actively worrying, or when you are actively worrying, how it makes you feel. And it may make you feel proactive and productive, but in reality, it's not a way of being productive or proactive. So that's one way that people tend to deal with waiting. And then there's the people that go in the opposite direction. It's the people that decide that the outcome is going to be favorable or positive. And I say that in quotation marks, like in air quotes, because, we don't really know in life what is favorable or positive, but we create scenarios in our minds that we believe are the right scenarios. So in my case, let's say for my sister, the scenario would be that she's healing. That would be what I would consider a favorable scenario. One way to handle the waiting game is to affirm and declare and be 100% convinced that she is going to heal and that nothing could go wrong, and refuse to even think about anything negative, because we have to manifest that she is going to be well. And that actually is a problematic approach also. If you've ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, it's an amazing book. I'll put it in the show notes. But one of the lessons that he learned as a prisoner in a Nazi camp, one of the very few prisoners who survived being held captive in a Nazi camp, concentration camp, was that the prisoners who were the most positive tended to die. Let me explain. Prisoners would say things like, we're going to be free by Thanksgiving, or we are going to be free by Christmas. They would attach an outcome with a very specific date or a very specific time frame. They would declare their outcome, and they would believe with everything in their heart that the outcome was going to turn out in the way that they were declaring. And they would put all of their hope and all of their focus and all of their energy into making that a reality. And what would happen is that Thanksgiving would arrive and they had not been freed. Christmas arrived and they had not been freed. And when they realized that they were unable to manifest the result that they were looking for, the outcome that they had predetermined was favorable, they would lose hope. And when you lose hope, you lose everything. So they would die. So Viktor Frankl talked about it being very dangerous to attach specificity to an outcome and to put all of your hope and desire into that outcome. And I learned a lot from that, and I've chosen to not engage in that. So those are the two ways that we could approach a waiting game. And you can see it. You could see it in all the different types of waiting games that you've experienced in your life, and you will understand what I'm saying. If it works out for you, like you're convinced your child is going to make it into that high school, and you're like declaring it, and it's gonna be, and the child doesn't get into the high school, it's extremely devastating. It's just very devastating. But if you worry that your child is not going to get into the high school and worry and worry and worry, and what are we going to do if she doesn't get in? And, she's going to be devastated. And, it's so hard to get into the high school, and chances are she's not going to get in, and the waiting list is long. And then she gets in, you suffered in advance for no good reason. So I want to propose a healthier way to wait. It's a way to tap into your resilience. Now, I learned this strategy from my father. You see, my father spent 17 years battling cancer. And at the time, I was very young. So I didn't really know how to wait. And therefore, I looked to my father to observe how he waited. And honestly, the way he waited for his cancer results and the way he lived during the time that he battled cancer was a masterclass in resilience and a masterclass in waiting. I often say that we are always in training for something bigger. And as I sat there in that waiting room with the surgeon talking about my sister's future outcomes, and I looked around in my family, I thought to myself, I've been in training for this. I have the skill sets necessary to help my family wait this out in a healthy, happy, and productive way. Now, I can't, force them to think the way that I think, or force them to approach worrying the way to approach waiting, not worrying, the way that I propose, but I can certainly model that behavior, and I can certainly try to expose them to it in hopes that I can help them live a little better in the meantime, and maybe even find a spark of bliss in the moment. So the first tip in waiting, in the waiting game, in a resilient way, is the first thing that we used to do is explore all the possibilities, right? So we've got plan A, we've got plan B. What do we know now? What do we think we can happen? What should we be ready for? And how can we be proactive in that? So if, I remember my dad and I used to go to the hospital at UM, and we would speak to the doctor, and the doctor would say, okay, well, the next steps are X, Y, and Z. And then we wait for the results. And if the result is this, we do this. If the result is that, then we do that. And then we'd leave the doctor's appointment with a future date in hand. We'd go downstairs to the cafeteria, and we would sit and discuss what had just happened. What do we know now? What do we think we can happen? What's plan A? What's plan B? And we'd talk about the results. If it's favorable, based on what we think is favorable, then we're going to handle things this way. If, it comes back that the cancer has spread or that the treatment didn't work, how are we going to handle it? What are the things we need to think about? What are the things we need to be ready for and prepared for? It was always meant not in a we're going to die kind of way, like this is going to be the most horrible thing in the world, but rather in a, how are we going to be efficient and proactive in taking care of this situation? Like, what are the plans? What are the options that we know? And we'd always leave room for plan C. Because you see, my father had an understanding that oftentimes things didn't go according to plan A or plan B. There was oftentimes plan C that we couldn't even predict, and we had to leave room and space for that plan. So we would talk about things. Maybe in that moment we'd cry. We'd do a little bit of the grieving, a little bit of the what if, but we would do it in a time frame, and then we would say, okay, we've explored all of this. We've explored all the possibilities. We've talked this through, and now it's time to go back to our lives in a productive, happy, and healthy way. And we are not going to continue to dwell and brew in these possibilities, because that is not within our control. So that was the first step in tapping into our resilience. The next step was focusing on what was working right now. So what are the current wins? What are the things that we need to, what's working right now? What are we grateful for right now? So when we sat in the waiting room with my sister's results and the surgeon left, my family kind of jumped into what happens if she doesn't heal? What happens if what are we going to do then? All this kind of stuff. But we kind of glossed over what was working right now, which was the current surgery. The current surgery was a huge win. It was a huge success. It could have worked out terribly, but it worked out better than we expected. So one of the things that we had to do is come back to the present moment and say, hey, have we expressed gratitude for what is working right now? Right now, are you feeling good? Right now, are you financially stable? Right now, are you happy in your current job, or are you capable of maintaining the job that you have? Right now, are you happy in the school you're in, right? Like, bring it back to what is working right now. What are you grateful for right now? And what are your current wins, no matter how small? Maybe, you just finished that entrance exam to the high school. Well, finishing the entrance exam is a win. It's a success because you put yourself out there and you did the work that you needed to do for this to enter this school. So you've put yourself out there. That's a win, and that is working for you in your favor right now. So that's another tool in tapping into your resilience. And then number 3 is bringing yourself back to what is within your control. Now that we know what the possibilities are, we know what's working right now, we know where we're at, what's going on right now. Now what's within our control? My father used to say often when he'd take the test, take the lab work or the x-ray or the MRI or whatever it was, he'd come out and he would say, Las cartas están echadas. The cards have been dealt. And he used to say that also, like if he did a treatment, like when the treatment was over, he would say, okay, las cartas están echadas. The cards have been dealt. And what that meant was I have done what is within my control. And the cards are what they are. Let the cards fall where they may, kind of thing. Understanding that we are resilient beings and we can handle whatever comes our way. So bringing yourself back to what is within your control is a very important thing. But there's other things that are within our control. And this is where we get to be positive, right? Because it's nothing is black or white. We kind of like dance in the middle. But positivity isn't, I declare that everything is going to work out the way that I want it. No, that's not necessarily effective. But there is an effective way of being positive, and that is through visualizations, for example. So I have been sitting with my sister and I've been telling her, close your eyes and I want you to visualize yourself healing. I want to visualize a light inside of your body traveling through your veins, going into your foot and healing those wounds. And I would go through like a very elaborate exercise with her. I'll tell you that when I had a pneumonia in 2019, and I was hospitalized, put in ICU for 7 days. I almost died from this pneumonia. And they used to do these albuterol treatments with a mask, and like they would give me all this stuff like to open up my lungs, I guess. And I had this huge mass covering my lung inside my body. So much so that they had thought it was cancer at some point. It was a very scary time. But I remember when we would do these albuterol treatments, I would use that time. The treatment was like 45 minutes, and I remember it had a very distinctive smell. I did not like the smell. But rather than sit there and dwell on the disgusting smell or how long it was taking or how much pain I was in, I would use that time for visualization. And I love the movie Inside Out. So, there's the little characters. I know Inside Out 2 came out and I haven't seen it yet. I'm dying to see it. But at the time, it was just the first one, Inside Out. And there was the little girl that I remember in the movie, she'd come like, come on, boys, we got to help her, And I would visualize that little girl inside my body and the antibiotics that they had given me, like as a little army of men taking care of me. And I would hear her directing the army to clean my lungs like if they were cleaning a windows. So I would see her. I'd see her grabbing the army of people, heading towards my lungs. I would see this like dirty window, and I would see her with like a little window cleaner, and it would squeak, and she would like wipe down my window, and she was clearing out the mass. And I would visualize this like clean, beautiful, healthy lung. And every day, 3 or 4 times a day, every time they did that albuterol treatment, I would use all of my energy into creating that outcome. Why? Because it was within my control. Now, I didn't know what was going to happen to my lung. I didn't know if that pneumonia was going to pass quickly or whatever. I remember them telling me before I left the hospital, they said, we're going to do an MRI of your lung. And the doctor saying, I don't expect there to be much change, because it usually takes about 3 to 6 weeks for you to see any change in your in the mass in the lung, for that to clear up. So I remember going in to do the MRI and really expecting to see no difference. Like I wasn't, I didn't expect one result over the other. And when they came out, they're like, your lung is 90% clear. It's incredible. And I was like, oh my God, it must have been my visualizations. Now, maybe it was, maybe it wasn't, maybe it was just the antibiotics, who knows? But I participated in what was within my control through my visualizations. Other things that are within your control are prayers and mantras. I never realized how important prayers are. My father was agnostic, so he really didn't pray. And when I was going through his cancer, we didn't really use prayer as part of our toolbox. But with my sister's condition, a lot of people that I know have been praying for her. And one of the things I noticed is that when you are praying something like the rosary, for example, the rosary is a way of bringing yourself back to the present moment, because you're focused on each bead, on the prayer that you're on, reciting it over and over again like a mantra, and putting all of your energy into your faith in God. And that is a very healing process, because it is within your control. The same thing goes if you're not one to pray, is through mantras and affirmations or meditations. They all serve a very powerful purpose, and that's bringing you back into what is within your control. Other things that are within your control is, what are the tasks that are due at hand right now? You can control what you're eating today. You can control if you're moving your body today. My mom has been there taking care of my sister, and she's been so strong and so amazing throughout the whole thing. God bless her. And, she's going through a hard time. She's an older woman, and, this is very hard on her with her daughter. But the other day, she has Achilles tendonitis, and she had gone to physical therapy, and they told her these exercises that she had to do for her tendonitis. And the other day I said to her, we're at the hospital, like, Mommy, have you done your exercises? And she said, no, mi amor, I'm going to wait till this is all said and done with Gati, and then I'll do my exercises. And I said, no, Mom, you've got to do your exercises now, like today, because we don't know how long we're going to be here with Gati. We don't know what the results are going to be. We can't procrastinate what is important today. We can't procrastinate living so that we can participate in worrying. That we can't do. So I kind of, encouraged her to do her exercises, and she has. She's been doing her exercises every day. I'm like, you can do them while you're sitting in the hospital, like just do those exercises. That is within your control, and you're participating in your own healing while you are waiting on the results of your daughter's healing. Okay? So those are the tools that I use in waiting in a productive and proactive manner. Other things that are within your control is researching, speaking to doctors, looking for available treatments, just participating in the things that you can do that allow you to engage in being productive and putting your part without focusing too much on what the outcome is going to be, because the outcome is not within your control. So during this time, as we're engaging in all these techniques to wait by tapping into our resilience, I have several mantras that serve me very well, and I'd like to share them with you. And I've kind of said them throughout the podcast, but I'm going to lump them all here for you in one shot. One of them is, I am in training for something bigger. When you are going through something hard, you are in training for something bigger. You are developing a skill set. When you look at your life like that, you are giving your suffering meaning. You are giving your pain meaning, because it is a masterclass in being human. You are learning and you are growing. And I know it hurts. I know it hurts. It's hurting all of us, but it is training you to become a resilient, capable person. And when you believe that you are resilient and you are capable, you can go through anything. The second mantra is, I do the work and I surrender the outcome. That's when we talk about what is within your control. You do all the work, do all the things that you need to do, but you surrender the outcome, because it could be plan A or plan B or maybe plan C. Life will surprise you. So that's the third mantra. Life will surprise me. Oftentimes we worry so much about the worst case scenario, the worst case scenario, the worst case scenario, and we think it's either the worst case scenario or the best case scenario. But most of life is in the middle. It's like not the best news, not the worst news. You couldn't have even predicted the thing that is going to come up and that's going to make you worry next. So life will surprise me. I am not in control. Life will surprise me. So there's no point in hanging on to one outcome or the other, because this is, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And then lastly, I can do hard things. I can do hard things. That affirmation came to me when I first created the program for Rejuva Fast, and which actually we're starting Rejuva Fast today. Today is the day that we're starting our 5-day mimic fast. And that's actually a really great example. I could have decided that because of what I'm going through with my sister, I am not going to participate in the fast because I don't want any added stress into my life. It's stressful enough to deal with what I'm dealing with. The last thing that I need to do is participate in a mimic fast. But I decided that I wasn't going to procrastinate living. I have decided that I do a fast once a quarter, and this is the time that the fast came up. And because I have the capacity, I'm capable of doing the fast. I am going through this thing that I'm going through with my sister, but rather than saying I can't do the fast, what I'm doing is that I am making my sister the intention of the fast. So every time that I feel hungry, I'm giving that up in surrender for my sister. Every time that I feel anything during the fast, I'm going to give it up for my sister's pain. I'm going to do it in honor of her pain. I'm going to do it in honor of her healing. I'm going to do what I can do because fasting is within my control, but fixing my sister isn't, unfortunately. But I will participate the best way that I know how. So I'm going to do my fast. But anyway, when I first created the fasting program, I created the affirmation, I can do hard things, because fasting can be hard. And that affirmation has carried us through so many times in my life. That was one of the best affirmations I have ever attached myself to. And every time that we think about what life can look like if things don't turn out the way that I want them to turn out, I remind myself that we are resilient humans, that we are capable of doing hard things, and that we will do whatever is presented in front of us, and we're going to do it with resilience, with love, with power, and with strength, because we can do it. One of the affirmations that I've been using for my sister that really has resonated with her, I got from my friend Betsy when she lost her daughter. And that is, I can do all things in Christ who strengthens me. So for me, I say I can do hard things. And then I gave that one to my sister. I can do all things in Christ who strengthens me. And every time that she's feeling horrible, horrible, horrible pain, I start reciting that affirmation, that prayer. I can do all things in Christ who strengthens me. And she resonates with it, and she has held on to it. And I can see her getting stronger right in front of my eyes in that moment, even though she is going through so much pain. So this is how I wait. This is how I play the waiting game. This is how I tap into my resilience, and how I encourage you to tap into your resilience, because you're going to have to wait for things in life. You have to wait for sometimes very difficult things, and you don't know how things are going to turn out. And I just want you to know that you are resilient. You can do hard things. You are in training for something bigger. So keep doing the work and surrender the outcome. And the truth is that even when things have the worst case scenario, like when they turn out in the worst case scenario that you couldn't have dreamed of or feared so much, I believe that even that is life being rigged in your favor. That is a lesson for you. You are supposed to go through that. You are supposed to find meaning and strength in that. That is somehow okay, even when it doesn't feel okay. So I hope this has served you. It certainly is serving me during this time. And I'm so grateful to my father that he modeled that for me when he needed to, because he really trained me and gave me that skill set. And because of that, even though he's not here with me anymore, he's still with us today on this podcast and always in my heart. So I hope you guys have a happy week. I hope you have a sacred Sunday. And I hope that if you are waiting for something, you are waiting with a resilient heart. Take care, everybody.
That's it for today's episode. Thanks so much for being here. I am deeply, deeply grateful for this time to connect. Now, if you are feeling called to dig deeper and really work on elevating your mindset, your wellness, and your relationships, and you're looking for a life coach to work with you one-on-one and really help you just retrain your brain, define success on your own terms, and just live healthier, happier, and more meaningful life, well, I invite you to schedule a consult with me. Let's have a conversation and see if working together is in our future. You can find the link to calendar of consult right there in my show notes, but you can also connect with me on my website, carolinedeposada.com, or send me a DM on Instagram at Caroline de Posada. I'm so excited to connect with you a little further. Now, as far as this podcast goes, I would so appreciate if you could leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. Those reviews help us so much. And like my friend always says, the project is big and you're a part of it. So thank you for helping me spread good in this world.